75 years since the United States dropped an atomic bomb on Japan.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima. Thousands of young Americans.
As Julius Robert Oppenheimer witnessed the success detonation of the world's first nuclear weapon, he was haunted by its consequences.
I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
यह हमारे भगवद गीता का एक श्लोक का ही ट्रांसलेशन है। अध्याय 11 श्लोक 32। कालोस्मि लोकक्षय कृत प्रविद्धो लोकास माहोत्रुमिह प्रवृत्तः। मतलब मैं ही विनाश का मूल कारण हूँ और मैं ही हूँ जो दुनिया को अंत करने आया है। Oppenheimer was a man of many talents and a brilliant physicist. He spoke 8 languages and even wrote poetry. Yet he will always be remembered as the father of atomic bombs. The man gave people the power to destroy themselves, and he was haunted by his own creation. Oppenheimer was responsible for creating the world's most devastating weapon the world has ever seen. Under his leadership, the best physicists of 20th century built the atomic bomb. But they didn't realize that the weapon they created could change or destroy the world forever. This video is about how Oppenheimer built the atomic bomb, how the atomic bomb affected our history and how it's gonna affect our future, why scientists are worried about its applications, and why they think it will lead to end of all life on Earth. Was Oppenheimer a hero who helped in ending the World War? Or was he just a villain who created a weapon that could lead to destruction of human race? It was April 22nd, 1904. The older son of a German Jewish immigrants was born in New York. J. Robert Oppenheimer was born into an upper-class Jewish family. His father Julius was a textile importer who became very wealthy. His mother came from a rich background but was an incredibly talented artist. His parents were multimillionaires. After attending an elite private school in New York City, he went to Harvard in 1922 intending to become a chemist. He became very attached to experimental physics after taking a course on thermodynamics at Harvard. Oppenheimer अपना सारा दिन लाइब्रेरी के अंदर ही बिता देता था. He then crossed the borders and went to University of Cambridge to conduct research on experimental physics. The stress of studies threw him into depression and he became emotionally unstable. I can really relate to him with this. He placed an apple injected with toxic chemicals on the desk of a physics tutor. उसने प्रोफेसर के एप्पल में कुछ poisonous chemicals इंजेक्ट करके रख दिए थे क्योंकि प्रोफेसर उसको बहुत असाइनमेंट देता था. Fortunately, the tutor didn't eat the apple, but the attempted poisoning became known to the Cambridge University authorities. Due to his family's wealth, Robert wasn't expelled from Cambridge on a condition that he goes for counseling sessions with psychiatrists at London. It was 1925 and 21-year-old Oppenheimer was becoming fascinated by the new field of quantum mechanics. Oppenheimer left Cambridge to continue his studies in Europe at the University of Göttingen in Germany. His mental health started improving because he found a community of people who were as obsessed with physics as he was. He was only 23 years old when he received his PhD. I am also 23 और मेरी तो बीटेक के 4 साल में ही फट गई. After his PhD, he immediately returned to US, where he worked as a research fellow at Harvard and then California Institute of Technology. He published more than a dozen papers in the 2 years he was at Göttingen. Many of them expanded upon the work of Werner Heisenberg, who was just 3 years older than Oppenheimer. The two eventually met in 1927 and became really good friends. But just 15 years later, they became rivals, attempting to make the first nuclear bomb, Oppenheimer for USA and Heisenberg for Nazi Germany. In August of 1939, Albert Einstein signed a letter to President Franklin Roosevelt, warning about the possibility of nuclear weapons. The letter described how the Nazis are potentially building an atomic bomb and how this weapon can end the whole American civilization. That German scientists could make a nuclear weapon, and if they do, Hitler won't hesitate to use it on them. The intensity of this letter combined with the ongoing World War II created an urgent response from United States. In 1942, the Manhattan Project was formed, a top-secret army project to develop the atomic bomb. This was a massive scientific attempt to create a weapon of unimaginable power, a bomb so powerful it could potentially end the war. On 18th of September 1942, General Leslie Groves was put in charge of the Manhattan Project. On day 1, he ordered 1,200 tons of uranium ore. Next month, he chose Oppenheimer to be the director of the project and chief architect of the atomic bomb. Washington threw ridiculous amount of money on this project. They spent over $2 billion on this project by 1945. The Manhattan Project needed a location, somewhere isolated, to keep the project secret and safe from the enemy. Oppenheimer chose Los Alamos, New Mexico. He had fallen in love with the desert in the mountains of New Mexico when he was in his 20s. In 1943, Oppenheimer estimated that he will need 6 scientists and few engineers to build the bomb. But he was very wrong. Atomic bomb बनाना कोई easy काम नहीं है और इसके लिए बहुत ज़्यादा manpower चाहिए था. 764 scientists would end up working for the Manhattan Project, and over 600,000 people in total were involved in the making of the atomic bomb. Oppenheimer called the best physicists from all around the world to work on this project. Among them was Enrico Fermi, a physicist from Italy who was as smart as Oppenheimer. There was also Lee Salad, who led the research of plutonium, and Hans Bethe, a brilliant physicist who was essential in making the bomb. These men and over 100 top physicists had a monumental task ahead of them. It was in December of 1942 the Manhattan Project created the first functional nuclear reactor. It was the first of its kind and it was the first step towards atomic bomb. The atomic bomb was required to overcome 2 primary challenges. 1. Obtaining enough material capable of sustaining a nuclear fission chain reaction, and 2nd was engineering a device that could trigger those chain reactions. Uranium-235, a naturally occurring isotope, and plutonium-239, a synthetic element, were identified as suitable materials. The reason for this choice was these elements were highly splittable or fissionable. They have the ability to start a chain reaction when hit by a neutron particle. अगर इतना सब chemistry सर के ऊपर से जा रहा है तो ignore करो. Let's jump to the next chapter of the story. On July 16th, 1945, scientists detonated a test bomb on a small town of New Mexico. Just 6 kilograms of plutonium created an explosion that was equivalent to nearly 25,000 tons of TNT. The New Mexico mountains were looking brighter than in the daylight. It was so hot that the desert sand melted into glass. The success of this test meant an atomic bomb is ready to be used by US military. And in this exact moment, Oppenheimer said those famous words.
I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
It was 1945, it was 6 years since World War II has started, and despite Germany's surrender, Japan was still resisting. Reports emerged that the Japanese army had developed a biological weapon, and in about 1 month they were preparing a biological attack on the American West Coast.
The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid many-fold, and the end is not yet. With this bomb, we have now added a new and revolutionary increase in destruction.
On 6th August 1945, the most powerful weapon in the world was dropped in the Japanese city of Hiroshima. The blast from the explosion, equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT, killed nearly 70,000 people. Another 70,000 burned of burns and radiation poisoning in the following months. 3 days later, another bomb fell on Nagasaki, killing over 74,000 people with equally devastating effects. More than 95% of the people killed in the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were civilians. Most were women and children. In 1965, recalling this moment, Oppenheimer said another verse from Gita.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent.
The Japanese foreign minister signed the instrument of surrender, followed by the Army Chief of Staff. General MacArthur signed. Eyewitnesses saw his hands tremble. The Allied nations signed as well, bearing witness to the end of the worst war in human history.
After the war, Oppenheimer had become a national hero. His portrait was on the cover of Times magazine, and he became a very famous person. In 1947, he became the director of Institute of Advanced Study at Princeton. He also became the chairman of the General Advisory Committee, where he became an advisor on nuclear weapons related issues. In August 1949, the Soviet Union tested their first atomic bomb. And the US military quickly decided that the best course of action is to build a more powerful bomb, the hydrogen bomb, known as the Super. Oppenheimer was against the development of Super because he thought this would lead to the end of the world. He and other scientists signed a petition to the US and the world to give up on nuclear weapons for good. Now that they have used it, Oppenheimer said there was no reason to use it ever again. Oppenheimer even took this argument to the president, but the meeting didn't go well. But President Truman pushed the project, and 3 years later the first hydrogen bomb was tested in Marshall Islands. That's 400 times more powerful than the nuclear bomb. In 1961, the Soviet Union tested the Tsar Bomba. It was the most powerful explosion ever. It was 5 times more powerful than America's hydrogen bomb and 2000 times more powerful than the nuclear bomb. This type of arms race was exactly what Oppenheimer had feared. Due to his opposition to the hydrogen bomb, Oppenheimer was revoked from his security clearance. He was accused of treason, and people said he betrayed his nation just because he was against hydrogen bomb. In December 1953, Oppenheimer was suspended. He was a lifelong smoker, and in 1966 he was diagnosed with throat cancer. And after a short time, Oppenheimer passed away on February 18th, 1967 at the age of 62.
I think when you play a meaningful part in bringing about the death of over 100,000 people and the injury of a comparable number, you naturally don't think of that as with ease.
He's dead, but his creation still remains. There are still around 12,000 nuclear weapons all around the world. Just like the Cold War, US and Russia control the majority of these nuclear weapons in the world. Russia has under 6,000 nuclear weapons and the US around 5,000. The remaining 1,000 are controlled by other world powers. China has 400, France and UK has 300, and 200 split between India, Pakistan, Israel and North Korea. Only Russia and US possess a real capacity to have a full-scale nuclear war. Recently, it's reported that Vladimir Putin has proposed to use nuclear bombs on Ukraine. And if this happens, it would be disastrous. It would kill millions of people, if not billions. And the survivors of these bombs would have to deal with massive levels of radiation and horrible nuclear winter. Studies predict that global temperature would fall by 8 degrees. The combined effect of cold and radiation would destroy the ecosystem. Farming would be nearly impossible for years. Starvation would take over the world, possibly for years, if not decades. It is very doubtful that our civilization would even survive this blast. And because of this possibility, no country after World War II has used nuclear weapons. At least not yet. Advances in science and technology has given humanity tremendous power, but at what cost? Unfortunately, technologies are advanced now, and it has increased the destructive potential of these weapons. And for this reason, the threat of a nuclear war still remains a global concern. If you like this video, do comment your thoughts and click to that subscribe button. It would be really helpful for the channel. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.